My name's Nathan LaValle. I'm one of the pastors at Alive, and I'm joined here with Michaela, my dear friend, and we are going to be having a podcast just talking about her experience coming to Christ and her experience with Alive Church. So thanks for joining me. Say hi to the people.
Hello.
Awesome. So Michaela, tell us just a little bit about you from the time you were born up until the time that you came back to Florida. Give me the 5-minute overview of everything that took place during that time. So obviously started with I was born, because that's how everyone's story starts, and then continue. What's next?
I was born in Illinois, and I lived with my mom, dad, and my brother.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents got divorced 2018. And a few years later, my dad moved out here to Florida. And 2 years ago, I moved out here with him.
And how old were you when you moved down here to Florida?
19.
19. So up to that point, I mean, what were some of your interests? What were some of the things you enjoyed doing in those middle school, high school, kind of young adult years prior to moving to Florida?
So just like hobbies?
Yeah, hobbies. Yeah.
I played piano a lot. I've been playing since I was 8 years old. I've never
I
had
didn't know that.
You didn't?
Since you were 8? That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, nice.
So my grandma bought me a keyboard for my 8th birthday.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it had a lot of songs that were preset. So it had this little screen that would show you each note to press.
Wow.
And it would have this program where you could play each note along and it'll pause, and it had a metronome and everything to follow along with. And I spent so many hours learning the songs on there, which is how I started learning to play piano. Is like, I still don't know how to read sheet music. It was just learning by watching the little screen, or
like Mary Had a Little Lamb, like Hot
like
Cross
Fur
Buns.
Release.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
That's crazy. And it's like a small kind of toy keyboard or like a legit like piano?
I think it had 61 keys. So
Okay. A little smaller than a full-size piano.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So you're playing a lot of piano. Any other hobbies that you were interested in? Kind of, I'm just trying to fill out like what was your childhood like a little bit? Like what were some of the things that you did, you know, who you are?
I loved cooking and baking, just trying new recipes. I did a lot of sewing.
Mm-hmm.
When I was little, I'd sew my own toys and make clothes. A little bit of knitting as well. I also like to read books, watch TV here and there.
Yeah. So when you moved to Florida, what caused the move? Whatever detail you want to go into, you know, whether deep or shallow, what caused that move back to Florida? What was kind of the circumstances surrounding that?
So when I moved here, July 2024, I had just graduated from high school earlier, and so like I moved in with my mom and my grandma. We lived together, and I'm like missing parts of the story, sorry.
That's okay,
But-
no worries.
So my mom moved out, and it was just my grandma and I,
Okay.
and she has lupus and often doesn't have a lot of energy to go places and do a lot. She has to rest for she just has to rest a lot.
Yeah.
And so I didn't get to have this, I guess, idea of what I thought becoming an adult would be like. I didn't get to go to college in person or hang out with my friends or really go anywhere very often.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I just got to a place where I was just tired of being in the house all day, every day.
Mm-hmm.
Everything just felt the same every day. And there was a moment where I just prayed, God, if you are real, please help me to change my life and change my environment, that every day wouldn't feel like just monotonous, everything, the same thing every day and just all blur together, but that I'd be able to experience life differently. And like a week, maybe 2 weeks, it was less than 2 weeks, but my dad called me and like the first thing he said was, come move to Florida.
Whoops.
He didn't even ask.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Okay, so we got to rewind a little bit because you're saying, God, if you're real, help me to do this. So what was your belief like at that point? Clearly you weren't confident in God's existence. You were like, maybe, like, can you do this thing for me? What was that like? What was your belief? If you had to describe your belief system in regards to God, religion, what was that like at that point?
I think I equally thought the possibility of God existing was the same as possibly not.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Like,
you weren't vehemently opposed to the idea of God.
No.
But you're like, it's a toss up here. So you throw the Hail Mary and you're like, God, if you're real, do this. Within 2 weeks, you get a call from your dad. He goes, move to Florida. And then what's your answer? Act it out right here. I'm your dad. Move to Florida.
Wait, what?
Just move to Florida.
But I can't. My friends are out here. And
No.
like,
Just move to Florida.
Well, maybe I could. Because you did say you have the extra bedroom and you were going to teach me how to drive and I could go to school out there. Oh, and you're 10 minutes from the beach?
Yeah.
It's awesome.
So how long was that conversation? How long did it take you to decide you were coming?
Probably an hour to an hour and a half over the course of 3 days.
Okay. That's amazing. Now, at this point, did it register with you that just a week or two before you had prayed for something like this?
Not at all.
What? So he gets the call, 2 or 3 days, you're contemplating, not a thought of, I just prayed to change my environment and now I'm moving to Florida. You didn't realize at that point.
Not at all.
Okay. So that's incredible. You come to Florida and is the timeline that your dad was attending Alive already?
Yes.
Okay. So he's attending Alive. You arrive into Florida. It's way hotter than you're used to. Walk me through the first couple weeks. Did you immediately stumble into Alive? I mean, what was that like in terms of first couple weeks and first experience at Alive?
The first time I came to a live church was, I want to say 3 or 4 weeks after I moved here.
Okay.
So my dad and I had a booth at the Daytona Beach Flea and Farmers Market.
Mm-hmm.
And directly across was Darlene.
Mm-hmm.
And every Saturday night when we'd close up for the day, before she would like put the locks on the tarp, she'd go, wait. Am I going to see you at church tomorrow morning?
This is a sweet lady that attends Alive. Just so sweet. And so she would just say that every week, basically?
Yes, every Saturday.
Every Saturday. And what would you say?
I'd say, I'll think about it, or we'll see. Maybe. Mm-hmm. Something like that.
At a certain point, the guilt just built up. Is that what it was? Like, she's asked me so many times, I better go just once to get her off my back. So then you come to Alive. First time. What was that like? You know, what was different about it from your past experiences in churches? Full, honest, blunt truth. I want it. I'm okay with it. Even though I'm one of the pastors, I can handle it. Whatever you thought the first time. I'd love to just hear what that experience was like.
I thought it was very different from what I was used to, because I've only been to church maybe 10 times, probably less than that. Mm-hmm. Just like Christmas or Easter.
Yeah.
Every handful of years, or like if a relative comes over, we'd go to church then. But what was immediately different about Alive was just the environment, because I'm used to everything being very formal, like everyone dressed in a suit or nice dress, and it seemed like upholding a status in a way, whereas coming to a live church, it felt like I walked into a family pretty much, and everyone was just like a big family there, and it wasn't like you had to prove yourself or
People weren't looking at you going, "Oh, look at that girl. Like she's not wearing a dress. She's not, she's
yeah,
not doing the manners, whatever." You weren't met with that kind of judgment or like performative outlook, but it
not at
was more
all.
like people who care about you.
Yeah, even though they didn't know me yet.
Yeah. So who was the first person you met? I mean, you're walking up to the church. Like, walk me through literally what took place.
So, like right before my dad left, I said, wait, I'm coming to church with you. So,
Okay.
he wasn't even expecting me to come that day, but we drove over. Then David and Eli opened the doors. They both said good morning and shook my hand, introduced themselves to me.
Wow.
And I don't remember who else was there at the time, but more people in the lobby said good morning to me and introduced themselves.
Yeah. It felt like people actually wanted to meet you, or did it just feel like they were doing it to be nice? I mean, what was kind of the feel of it that first time that you were there?
It felt like almost as if someone told people that I would be there because it seemed like they were excited to talk to me. And it was weird because I didn't know anyone there yet.
Yeah. That's incredible. Okay, so you're there. Now you sit through the service, right?
Yeah.
And we have a fairly typical Sunday morning service in terms of Christian churches. We've got a number of songs, we take communion, we hear a sermon, and then we visit afterwards. What did you think of all that? I mean, was it different? Was it the same? Was it, you'd prayed for this environment change. Had it struck you yet that this was a massive environment change?
Still not yet.
Okay. So you're sitting through the service. What is that like?
I think for the first time I guess I understood what the sermon was about, because any other time I'd gone to church, it usually was boring or I didn't really care much about what the message was on. I always fall asleep. But this time I was like, wait, that's it? Everyone's getting up and leaving? That's the end of service?
It went quicker. Oh my goodness. Okay, so you were used to like longer, laborious church services.
Yeah.
And we get in and out of there in about an hour average, maybe a little more than that on a given Sunday. Of course, Pastor Ryan is great at preaching in such a way that if you haven't been in church your whole life, there's still something that you can get out of a message. And I don't remember what he was preaching on that first time. I doubt you would remember what he was preaching on that first time. Now, the thing that does stand out to me as something I remember was all of the conversations that we had over the next year and a half. Can you talk about that component? And then I know we're going to get into the testimony in terms of that day that you decided to say, I'm following Jesus and I believe he's God. But what were these conversations like? Like you were having them left, right, and center,
So like conversations I had with both you and Pastor Ryan?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Or anyone else. I mean, you weren't someone who was just sitting there not talking, not asking questions. Like you had your questions. And I'd just be I think people would be curious to hear like what was the response to that? Because at least for me, Michaela, growing up in certain church contexts that I was a part of, question asking was kind of like a no, don't ask the hard questions. And my recollection is you came with the hard questions. And I'm just curious kind of how that felt. Did it feel like a place that you could honestly ask those questions? Did you feel like you were getting answers? I mean, just the whole thing I think would be very interesting to someone out there that might have questions of their own and haven't been able to ask them in church context before.
I had never been to church enough times to really get to a point where I could ask other people questions.
Fair.
So coming here, I was kind of afraid, just like, what? I can go up and ask the pastor of the church questions? Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not the same in other churches. You don't have that kind of access in other churches. What transpired over the next year? So you're at Alive. You feel this freedom to ask these questions. And then, if I dare say, Pastor Ryan and I coaxed extra questions out of you and would ask you questions, right? Wanted to get to know you. Describe to me the next year or so at Alive, just kind of the big things that jump out to you as being significant, if you can.
I started asking both of you just starting questions based off of what your sermon was about. So it would still be fresh in your mind, and I could ask about something you just talked about. And over time, just seeing how both of you would really take the time to make sure you gave thorough answers, not just anything off the top of your head, but you really took the time and considered answers and went through to find scripture to back up your answers and explain things if I didn't understand them, which made me comfortable with asking more questions. And then there was a point where I'd come in and you'd ask me, what questions do you have for me this week?
We built that relationship where I knew there was going to be something. Yeah, and I remember Michaela even telling you, like, I want you to keep a notebook. And I want you to write down the questions during the week that you have and bring them. And I remember a few times where you would bring a notebook and you had 4 or 5 questions to ask. Now, all of this is happening while we're tearing down equipment after church, typically. That was kind of our sweet spot for, Ryan or I having these conversations with you. And you just stick around. What struck me is that you wanted to be part of the community at Alive, and although you weren't certain about the whole Jesus dude, I mean, he seems cool. You weren't certain about his identity, right? But you liked his people. You wanted to be a part of the people of Jesus. At least that was my impression. Is that accurate, would you say?
Yes.
Yeah. So you're asking these questions, and in my recollection, we get to a place where you're going, okay, I've heard some arguments for God's existence. Checks out. I think I believe in God. I think Pastor Ryan talked to you about the Holy Spirit and brought some arguments about the Holy Spirit and a God that actually interacts with and engages with us personally. And you're like, I've felt that, right? All of this is coming along. You get to the question of Jesus. Who is Jesus? And I give you homework. What did I tell you had to do?
Well, there were a few different times you gave me homework.
And this time I told you to read a lengthy chunk of scripture.
Yes, read through the book of John.
Yeah. And so you take the Bible I give you, start reading through the book of John, encounter the person of Jesus. Does that just immediately sell it for you, or do you even have more questions at that point?
I still had a lot more questions at that point.
In some ways, more questions than you ever had. And so the questions are ramping up, and she's opening the Bible and she's like, what does this mean when he says this? And, you have to eat my body and drink. What is he talking about? You're bringing these questions. Ryan and I are doing the best we can to keep up. Like, you're asking these deep questions. And I remember the Sunday that the question of whether you're going to follow Jesus flipped. Now, I want to rewind just a little bit and think back to the moment that our church community found itself at the beach watching your dad get baptized. Your dad, Gerald, made the decision that he was going to get baptized. He had believed in God. He had been following Jesus for some time. But over the course of just hearing sermons where we're calling the church, like, if anyone hasn't been baptized, you need to be baptized. He goes, I think it's time for me. I need to get baptized. And you're there at the beach, right? You've made it to Florida, and he sets and establishes this example for you. And I remember looking at you on the beach. Do you remember this? I remember looking at you on the beach, and we're standing there, and I remember going, So you're next, right?
I remember that.
You do. And I remember you going, what? like, is he going to dunk me in the water right now? Okay, so fast forward. Gerald's gotten baptized. You've been reading the Gospel of John. Do you remember the Sunday that things kind of changed and shifted in your mind in terms of you going, am I going to put my trust in this Jesus guy? Like, am I going to make that jump, so to speak?
What was your question again? Sorry.
No worries. Do you remember the Sunday where we're sitting there, we're visiting, you're asking questions, and it's just kind of hitting you, and you're going, maybe I should trust Jesus. Like, maybe I should get baptized and do this thing and stop just kind of sitting on the sideline. Do you remember that Sunday?
I do.
What would you want to recount from that? Because like all of our talks, it was a long talk, long conversation. You had lots of good questions. I mean, recount what you would like to, if you know what I mean.
I think at that point, I had a better understanding of who God was, because initially I believed in like God the Father and God Holy Spirit, but not in Jesus. And I think this was a few months prior to this, but you told me before eating any meal to pray, God, please help me in my unbelief. And I did that for about 2 weeks, and I'm like, I still don't believe in Jesus. I don't know if I'm doing something wrong. And so I changed the prayer one day to, Jesus, if you are real, if you truly are God, please help me to see and experience and fully understand this. And that if you are who you say you are in the Bible, and it is true, then please help me to believe it. And I remember the next day going, like, just mentally reviewing, wait, why don't I believe in Jesus again? Like, what doubts do I have? And like from that moment forward, any questions or doubts that I had before, I just couldn't think of.
Right, yeah. Keep going. I'm loving it.
And like, it was so weird. I had all these questions lined up even just a few days before, and then just trying to think about it that day, just like, wait, why wouldn't it make sense for Jesus to be God? It says it in the Bible, and there's so many things that point to that being true. Why don't I believe this again? And shortly after that was when I was baptized.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're talking and just thinking about this idea of a zip line. Do you remember the zip line metaphor? Do you remember that?
I believe you said that God would bring you to the platform, but he won't push you to go on the zip line, and it's scary and you may not know what's ahead of you, or if
like you saw other people. Yeah. So the analogy, you see other people go down the zip line and they're screaming and having a good time. They're not falling to their death. They're fine.
Yeah.
But when you get up to the top and your feet are on the edge, suddenly you're like, I don't know if this is going to hold me. And yeah, God isn't going to shove you off. He's going to say, I've proven my trustworthiness to you. Are you going to step? Are you going to step forward? This is coinciding with that moment, like you're saying, where all of these questions and doubts have gone away. And I'm just like, it's just put right in front of you. Are you going to do it? Are you going to step off the platform? I remember you just sitting there for like minutes with not answering, just minutes. You're sitting there thinking about it. I think you did something like you went, yes. After like minutes of silence. And I'm like, wait, what? What do you mean yes? And you're like, I mean, yes. What do you mean yes? I'm like, and you're like, well, you're asking me if like I should, like, am I going to step? Yeah, I think I'm going to do it. And I was just so excited. I was so happy. I'm like, Oh my goodness, this is an answered prayer. So then I'm like, when you getting in the water? When are you getting baptized? Do you remember your answer to that question?
No, I don't remember.
I remember you going, I have to get baptized? And I was like, yeah, that's the thing. So anyways, long story short, was it that very Sunday that we end up making our way to the beach?
Yes.
Okay. It was that very Sunday. And talk to me about that. I mean, because that was, from my vantage point, also a special moment with the baptism and just the people around. What was that like for you?
It was kind of not what I was expecting because I had been to other people in our church getting baptized. I went to the beach with them or when we'd had baptisms at the church.
Mm-hmm.
But seeing them, I never thought, oh, this will be me one day.
Mm-hmm.
Also believing, but it just felt unreal how so many things came together, and it was like I was starting to see different things where I was like, maybe this wasn't a coincidence after coincidence after coincidence, but it was something that
Maybe God lined it up, right?
Yeah.
Maybe God was working. At that moment, did you see back to the beginning in that first prayer? Had you realized that this prayer for standing on the beach, this original prayer for an environment change?
I actually realized it that morning because you had a prompt to the whole congregation to write down on a rock something that God has done for you in the past year.
That's right. I forgot that coincided with that. Okay, so you're thinking, what has God possibly done in the last year?
Yeah, I remember sitting there and seeing everyone else on the worship team. They wrote down their answers and stood up, and you said, okay, let's meet back together here in the circle. And I looked down, I'm like, I don't have anything on my rock. I don't know what to put. What do I say? So then, I quickly prayed. I don't remember exactly what I prayed, but that I could remember something meaningful that God has done for me in the past year, because I knew that there were a lot of things, but I just couldn't think of anything at the moment. Mm-hmm. And then as soon as I stood up, I was like, oh, the biggest thing, me even being here in Florida. And that's when I think I realized it.
Yeah. So it struck you right then. You end up going, I am going to jump off the ledge. That evening, you find yourself at the beach. We call your dad. He's like, I'm not going to miss it. He's there. And if my recollection serves me right, he helped baptize you, right?
Yes.
What was that like? Was that just the coolest moment ever?
It was, because it was only a little more than a month after he was just baptized.
Yeah.
So it was just really cool because right after he was baptized, he put his arm around me and just whispered, "You're next."
That's right, you did too. Everyone was giving you a hard time about it at that point. Oh man. And so he's in there in the water with you, dunking you down, and you come up out of the water. Now, since then, this has been 7 months, 8 months?
It was October.
So about that.
7 months, yeah.
And, over the past 7 months, I've just watched God do such a beautiful thing in your life. We had invited you to play piano because of your love for piano on the worship team. Even though you didn't have it all figured out, we're like, none of us have it all figured out. And you were someone who, like we said in the beginning, you weren't this antagonistic, I hate God, he's not real. But you were like, I'm curious about God. And you got to a point eventually where you're like, I know there's a God, and who's this Jesus guy? So you're on the worship team. Well, you get baptized, and it's maybe a couple months later that you lead a song for the first time at a worship night. and you're playing piano and you're singing. And now, fast forward, we're in May of 2026. last Sunday, you were the worship leader for the entire service. I didn't plan the set list. I didn't lead the rehearsal. Did I do anything for the rehearsal?
You helped set up some of the microphones.
I set up microphones, Michaela. And genuinely, and I'm not saying this to flatter you, during the church service, I was in such a personal place of worship, and the environment that you fostered this past Sunday for that was what enabled and made that possible in part. You are crushing it. And we've got to this place where at the very beginning, you know, like you said, you had played some stuff on piano, on kind of the toy piano you'd got. And when you came in, it was like, it started rough, right? It was like, okay, I can maybe play a couple songs. And now you're leading worship, you're playing piano, you're like, it's just amazing. I'm so proud of you. What do you think God has in store for you over the next year or two at Alive? I know that's a really challenging question, so I'm going to filibuster for a minute so that you can think about it. Specifically, like as you look forward into the future, you know, we've seen all this growth of you coming here, and now you've made it to this place where, I mean, God has just built you up, even for you to be on a podcast and just be talking to people, like so many things outside of your natural comfort zone you're doing, and God has called and equipped you for. What's next?
I'm not really sure what might be next yet, but something that I have noticed since coming to Alive Church is that I now have the ability to just talk to people more, and a few people I've shared a testimony with, and even after worship on Sundays, they'd say how it's inspiring seeing like how quiet and shy I was when I first came in, and how I've stepped forward or stepped into things even if I was scared to do it. And I think what I was initially trying to say was that before I was not very good with going up to and just talking to people and being able to share really anything. But like now I do go up to people and I can answer questions like we were doing in a podcast or share a testimony, and it's like I've grown in so many ways, more so than I had like my entire life prior to coming to Alive Church.
Wow. That's amazing. I think God has even more in store for you, you know. Now, I want to just dig into one thing, and I think you would get this. Like, those who follow Christ don't automatically become extroverts, right? Like, God truly did design unique and different kinds of people in the world. And so some people have like looked at Myers-Briggs tests or like different personality tests and tried to like posit about what kind of person Jesus was. Like, was he an extrovert or an introvert? Or they look at the Enneagram, Jesus was definitely a 6 or something like that. And then from that, they kind of extrapolate and go, so this is the ideal kind of human. My view is different than that. I think that God has created lots of unique kinds of people, and that with every kind of temperament that truly is original to God's design, there is a version of that kind of person living fully inflamed for God. Now, I think across the board, we gather more boldness, right? Extrovert, introvert, we all gather more boldness as we live out our life for Christ. Across the board, we grow in holiness. Introvert, extrovert, whether you're someone who's more assertive or less assertive and compliant, we grow in holiness and following God's commandments. And then fear of the Lord, we grow in our fear of the Lord. There's these universal things. But then I also think that you and I are very different people, you know, just naturally. And what it's going to look like for you to faithfully follow Christ is in many ways going to look the same, but in some ways will look different. And so I don't know what it looks like either. I'm just excited to see what it's going to be. I know there's bound to be more times of you leading worship ahead. Maybe there will be more times of you teaching ahead or leading something ahead. You're involved in the young adult ministry at Alive. Maybe opportunities for you to take on some even more stretching and more leadership roles. We're along for the ride, and I'm excited to see it. Does this terrify you, or does it does it make you excited, or both?
Both.
That's awesome. Is there any final thing you would want to talk about, unpack, or even just say to the people that might be watching or listening to this?
I think I'd say that it may be intimidating to go into church, regardless if you grew up going to church or maybe have never gone, because you don't know the kind of people, or maybe where, like, there are different branches of Christianity and different types of views or understandings pretty much of the same text. And I would say, like, just don't be afraid to come in with questions, and if they don't respond like openly how you have here at Alive Church, then don't be afraid to ask other people questions. Like, don't allow a few negative experiences to stop you searching for true answers if you really are determined to like find answers. And I forgot what your question was again.
I think you answered it perfectly. And I'm gonna even give you a more specific version of the same question and have you hit on this, and then we're gonna close out the podcast here because we're coming up on 50 minutes here. So we've been going. Here's my more specific version of the question. I want you to imagine that there is a young lady who's listening to this. Somehow, through the magic of the internet, this podcast has made it onto a young girl's computer, and she's watching this. Maybe she's 16 or 17 years old, and she's like you were. She's going, maybe God's real, maybe God's not. Jesus makes a lot of claims. Are they really true? What would be your encouragement to that girl, and what would be some things that you would want her to think about in terms of why you believe that Jesus truly is worth following and trusting? I know that's a huge question.
Yeah,
right? It's a big question. In other words, what would you say to yourself if you could talk to that version of you 3 years ago that was so unsure of these things?
I would say to just to be open-minded, and sometimes there were things about learning about God where initially I was like, what? That's crazy, that can't be true, or this doesn't make sense. But I would revisit it and try to understand why maybe other people believe it to be true, or why it's in scripture, or
if she was going, Michaela, why should I become a Christian? Why should I go to a church? Why should I be a part of a community? What would your answer be? Maybe even more on the community part, like, why should I go to a church? I think you've found church to be a good thing. Like, what would your answer be to that question?
I'd say it's really intimidating at first, but once you find the right people, it's just something you look forward to every week, and it was something I had never imagined having before in my life, just a community where I come in and just know everyone that's there. But it's really worthwhile and amazing to be able to ask questions, like fun, silly questions, and just get to know people better, and also ask deep questions and have different perspectives on things and be able to better understand them.
That's amazing. I want to encourage you, if you are watching this podcast with Michaela and I, and maybe you're unsure, you don't know, do I believe in God? Do I not believe in God? Is Jesus this guy for me to follow, or someone for me to just maybe observe his teachings? I want to encourage you, like Michaela is encouraging you, to be someone who is open-minded and willing to seek truth to where it leads. I truly believe that the evidence falls in a staggering way on the side of Christian theism, the idea that there is a God and he is the God revealed through the Christian scriptures. And I believe a truth quest that seeks to get to the bottom of things finds Jesus. Even to your point of these things that you were learning in school and natural sciences, and we were talking earlier at the table about you learned in school we all came from reptiles, and we were curious about what's a reptile. There's this great quote, and it's the first drink from the cup of natural science brings you to atheism. But if you drink down to the bottom of the glass, God is waiting for you there. And so, as Michaela has encouraged, as I'm encouraging you, seek out truth, for it may be found. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and he is our means to accessing God. And he has died for you so that you can have life and life to the full. And he wants that life for you. There is no life that is more fulfilling, more valuable, and more meaningful than the one that the Creator instilled in you. And I encourage you to follow him and turn your eyes to Jesus. So thank you for watching the Alive podcast. If you're looking for a church in Daytona Beach area, I'll put the address in the description of the video here. We would love to see you on a Sunday at 10 a.m. And we'll see you next week with another episode. Way to go.